Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network, and joining me to talk about Game 1 of the Rockets Golden State series is Rockets analyst and co-host of the NBA Draft podcast, Upside Swings. It's Cooper Klein back with us. It's good to see you, Coop, and we'll get into different aspects of Game 1, but I believe it could be summed up in one stat. 7 for 34. Who was 7 for 34, Coop?
Was that Fred and Jalen on shot attempts?
They just need one of those two guys to show up every game. That's all.
Yeah, I thought Sengun showed up about as well as you can expect a guy who's a first-time playoff player to show up. I thought he really hustled on both ends. He was incredible. Our only consistent offense all night. But you need something from your championship winning point guard. You need something from your number 2 overall draft pick who you've been feeding developmental minutes to for so long. Just something from one of those two guys, especially if they're going to get, even if they're playing poorly, if they're going to get the level of usage that they got last night. It was despicable. Hard to watch.
Yeah, and Jalen's shooting will tell you if the Rockets are going to win a game. It's right there in the numbers. In their wins this season, he's shooting 44.6%. In their losses, he's shooting 38%. It's a 6.5% discrepancy. Just to compare, Sengun's discrepancy in wins and losses is just over 2% shooting. So Sengun's points are identical, win or loss, but Jalen scores 4 more points and wins. Cooper, he's a difference maker. He is the X factor. We knew this. I talked about it last week going into the game. If Jalen scores, if Jalen plays well, if Jalen puts the ball in the basket, the Rockets win games.
Yeah, it doesn't help that everybody else could also not put the ball in the basket, obviously, but you need to find some kind of way to get Jalen going. That's not just, hey, feed him the ball in an ISO against Steph Curry. Or, hey, you're going to run like one pick and roll with Sengun. And the entire game plan seemed to just be run him full speed at the basket. And while I did think it got us a lot of good looks that we really needed, we needed that quality of look. It wasn't with the correct lineup to properly capitalize on the advantage at the offensive boards, right? He wasn't doing that because the floor isn't spaced well enough when you're playing with Sengun and Steven Adams for him to be driving like that, unless you're going to run some creative offensive plays. And when the floor is spaced well enough, we're not able to crash the boards and really take advantage of that. And I think that's the big, I don't want to say next step for Jalen, but I think that's the true star leap for him, is being able to drive without just like a whole side cleared out for him. He's very obviously a skilled driver. He's very athletic, but he's not very good at navigating tight spaces. He's not very good at navigating, defenses that are in and around the space he's driving in. He has to just have so much space or he's not really able to do anything. So I do think that there's a world where they, find some plays, find some actions that'll really get him going. I would really like to see more, double screener sets. I really like some of the horn stuff they ran with Sengun and Adams setting screens for him and Fred from the elbows. But I want to see more stuff like that where you're purposefully getting Jalen downhill and then also attacking the boards. Because I think that's your biggest advantage, is you have one of the best drivers in the NBA in a straight line, and you have such great offensive rebounding. And I don't think that they really capitalized on the fact that those two things have great synergy together.
Right. And part of it is, you could say, well, it's too simplified or whatever. But the problem, I think, also is, in the playoffs, everybody knows what you're going to do. There's not a lot of new stuff. There's not many things that and you have to give this Golden State defense credit. It's been fantastic all season, very underrated. Jimmy Butler just added so much to what they do and his defensive ability. I kind of say sometimes the fans don't give the other team credit as much as, you want to point at, why didn't Jalen do more? But, it looked like, I don't know. Did you feel like Jalen was a little scared? Did he look tentative? Did he look not aggressive enough?
I thought he had the right mentality for his first playoff game. I just thought he looked like he had the jitters. And I think that was everyone's issue, right? Tari had the right idea. He was out there playing intense. He didn't look scared of the moment. He just had the jitters. It's your first playoff game. NBA playoffs are a huge deal. This team has been fighting and fighting and fighting. They barely missed it last year. They wanted this experience so badly. All these guys. Tari talked about even after his rookie year. So did Jabari, how hard it was to be so bad, not go to the playoffs. Like, this is a team that's really fought for the ability to get there. And it's pretty natural that they, had the jitters, were a little nervous. But they're tough. They still fought through it. I think the second half, everybody looked a lot more composed, than they did in the first half. And I just think Jalen just looked slightly off. I think it really was just jitters. I thought his defensive intensity was there all night. The possession that really stands out is the one where he completely locked up Steph and he just hit that insane fading three-pointer over him. But that was one of the best defensive possessions I've seen from him ever. It was great. He had some good rotations. He was really locked in. You just wanted to see the ball go in the basket. And for the most part, until the end of the game when he took that long two and he had some bad shots, I thought that the shot selection, the aggressiveness, all that kind of stuff is everything you could have wanted from a first-time playoff player. It just didn't fall.
Couple of things on VanVleet. Number one, we already know he's managing a knee issue. Udoka told us that weeks ago. That's important to note. Number two, he led the team in minutes with 40 with a knee issue, despite being terrible. His offense has been poor all year. He has not and cannot make this offense good against Golden State. Look at what they've done against Golden State offensively this year. There's no proof of that this season. Not only has the Rockets offense stunk, but Fred's 15 for 68 in the 5 games against Golden State. That's 22%. They're doing something to him. He cannot get the offense going. So that leads me to number 3. All the evidence points to the Rockets at this point in their development against this team winning with size. Bari and Tari need to take away a bunch of VanVleet minutes. Are you on board, Coop, with that idea?
Yeah, I actually really liked in the end of the first or the beginning of the second when they went to the Amen and all bigs lineup, the massive ball lineup that really just could not get anywhere offensively. But I really liked the concept of Adams, Sengun, Tari, Jabari, Amen. And they got like 6 offensive rebounds right in that possession. It's pretty obvious those guys just have not played enough together and have no idea how to just like, hey, let's move more, let's cut more with the ball. And the reason Fred played so much was because he's the only guy on the team who can dribble. As much as we want to be like Fred does stink. Fred blows my mind with how bad he is and how bad his decision-making is at times. He was the only guy last night who could dribble. There was the stretch in the second quarter. It's like 4 possessions in a row where they just kept driving, kept on getting stripped from the exact same position on the wing. Then Golden State just like completely turned that against us. And that's kind of when we lost control of the game. You need a guy who can dribble, who can A, create an advantage, or B, hit a shot, because Fred's not doing either. Fred had all these assists, but basically all of them were just giving the ball to Sengun at the elbow and telling him to go get to work. He doesn't do anything.
How about a guy that can make shots and dribble, that's sitting on the bench, that maybe should have played some last night? And I'm not saying a lot, but he should have played a few minutes. Aaron Holiday. And you can fade Aaron Holiday when you have the all bigs lineup. You can put a small, shrimpy Aaron Holiday out there. And look, Fred's not affecting the 2 guys shooting that you're scared of shooting. And that's Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. He doesn't affect their shots. They get off their shots whether Fred's in their face or not. So to me, why not Aaron Holiday for 12 minutes? I don't think it would have hurt this team at all yesterday.
No, and my biggest issue with Holiday is that he's like not the best point of attack player. When you're that size, you kind of have to make up for that with something on the defensive end. And he tries. But I think in a series like this, where there's like 5 different guys on that Warriors team you could hide Aaron Holiday on. We had Fred guarding Draymond for a huge chunk of the game. Let him do something on offense. See if he has it going. He's had 20-plus point games on this team. We know he can get buckets. Was it against Golden State that he had his big scoring performance his last season?
I forget, but Aaron Holiday, he is going to be a little bit of an issue because this idea of you can hide anybody with Golden State, you can't, because everybody has to be ready to jump out on Steph at a moment's notice. I mean, everybody's guarding Steph. This idea that, it's Amen just guarding Steph, like a lot of Rockets fans win the game. Well, we got Amen. We could stop. No. That's not what happened the last game. And we're going to get into, some stuff with the last game. We talked a little bit about with Adam Spillane. I'm going to get back to that. But there's nobody you can hide away from Steph. It's just, you got to contest and you got to fight and you got to have that. And Aaron Holiday can do that. Aaron Holiday, he doesn't have the strength if he gets caught up in a Draymond matchup like Fred does. But if they're isolating Draymond, if that's what they're going to do, thanks. We'll take it.
So Aaron Holiday is not like a good stopper that you throw on a guy to like get a bunch of stops like a Jayshawn Tate, but he can survive on Steph for half of a possession, right? Half of a possession here and there. He can stay on Steph for 5 seconds at the end of the shot clock. Like, you are not completely screwed if he gets stuck on Steph. If he's your primary Steph defender, then you might be screwed. There was no reason not to go to him at a certain point. You needed something new. And Aaron Holiday, as much as he will drive you nuts, if you give him 2-3 minutes and see if he can give you something new, I just don't see why that wasn't some kind of an adjustment. I would have liked to see something, especially in that second quarter when it was just like nothing was clicking. We had no answers to what they were doing, and we had nothing offensively. You have to try something else. And I bet we will. On Wednesday, we'll see new stuff coming down the pipeline because Udoka's a good coach. He knows what he's doing, but I do wish we had seen some kind of an adjustment early.
Yeah, sometimes Udoka, his in-game adjustments are either slow to react, which I've talked about this season, a little bit slow.
We've talked about that before. Like he's just too slow in game. Like when he has time to kind of sort it out and spend time with his coaches, but he almost leans too far into his, like, we're just going to trust our process and see what works. I do think there's a really delicate balance between trusting your own process and sometimes you just got to try something new.
Yeah. And VanVleet, I just keep going back to that because that's something where Udoka's like, I trust this guy to do what he does. And I'm like, okay, but the numbers show doing what he does is not good enough, offensively. I mean, he's been bad offensively this year. There's no two ways about it. We have a whole big 82-game sample size of his offense being poor this year. He's shooting being bad this year. He's banged up right now. This. So why not do something different, play him a little bit less? And again, I'm going to make this point one more time because I think it's very important. Like, you love VanVleet's defense. He doesn't affect things against the two guys that scare you in this game. And that's, he can't do a whole lot with Steph. Steph is always a team process anyway, but he's not going to affect their shot any more or less than Aaron Holiday does, I don't think. I mean, maybe he's a little bit better, but it's not that 5 or 10% compared to what you're missing on the other end is the issue. And yeah, like I said, Draymond Green, yeah, he can cover Draymond Green better, but I don't care if that is an issue. Then get a switch, go double team Draymond with somebody else, and have Aaron switch off. Whatever, you can figure that out. I want to hit a couple of positives, and I want to get to a guy that I think is like a super key guy, which we all know is a super key guy, and we'll talk about him in a second. But before we roll on, just a quick reminder. Let's get your thoughts. What do you think about what the Rockets are doing? What should change? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? You can support us, by the way, and get updates on every show that drops by subscribing on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and listen in the car or while you're out and about with your favorite podcast app. All right, Coop, you mentioned him earlier. Sengun was up for his playoff moment, his first one. 26 points. 11 for 18, shooting, 9 rebounds, 3 steals. The only thing that he needs to clean up, 5 turnovers. But is there anything really that you can complain if we get this Sengun the rest of the series?
There were like 2 or 3 turnovers in there that were 50-50 calls on block charge stuff. And I don't want to be like a ref complainer, but it was it was Golden State Warriors in the playoffs. You know what you're getting from the refs. But he played great. I for a first time playoff performance, this guy showed up. He brought the intensity on both ends. The only thing I could really say negatively is he was slightly slow in backline rotation help, right? So they would have some back cuts and he would just be like a step or two slow. But that's Golden State. What are you going to do against Golden State in tight? That's why you have guys like Tari and Amen and these supernatural defenders to help in that way. We saw that some with, Tari's shot blocking, them getting in the passing lanes, that kind of thing. But Sengun was just very clearly the best offensive player on the team for us. We did not get the ball to him enough, especially like just clearing out one side and letting him kind of get to work. They were not very good at their doubles, but Draymond was really good in isolation defense against Sengun. You talked about like, sometimes as fans, we don't talk enough about how good the other defense is. Draymond is incredible, especially in that kind of post-up defense. But I think that they should have done more to get Sengun into an isolation against a non-Draymond defender. Because every time they did, they put the defense in rotation. Golden State looked worried. Those guys would get fouls. That was very obviously a winning formula and should have had a much bigger emphasis placed on it than like Fred getting to a long two in the pick and roll or Jalen getting, a long pull-up three. So it was pretty infuriating. I felt like a real Turkish fan complaining about how Sengun's getting an unfair shake, but he was great. And I really hope that we see him gone to more as like a buster of this Golden State defense. And he does need to work on his awareness because there were a few times where he would just get trapped and he just could not see the very obvious pass out of it. But there were only a few times that happened. And for a game one, first playoff game, he played great.
Another positive, Jabari Smith. 3 for 3 from the field, including that big 3 in the fourth. The Rockets stunk from the free throw line, but he was 4 for 4. He deserved more minutes, but in the 25 he got, 11 points, 6 rebounds, a steal, a block. And Coop, I'd say his only issue was 4 turnovers. He was trying to do too much shot creation and traffic, but that's an easy fix. And I felt like he got the bugs out by the second half.
Yeah, there were too many times where he just take the ball up, dude. You're 6'11". Like there's that one pass. It was in the third or the fourth where he gets the straight line drive and then he tries to do the very Amen-esque interior pass to the cutter. And it's like, dude, you're not Amen. You just got to take the little push shot from 10 feet or you got to get to a better layup, right? Like he was just trying to do too much. And I get that, but man, he does need more minutes because he was impactful defensively. He had that huge block. His hands were good. He was really in place for rebounding. He was able to go in there, play multiple positions defensively, really impact the game. I thought he held up really well on switches. He didn't get stuck on Steph at all, which was really good. I don't think he played very many minutes that like overlapped with Steph, but he didn't end up getting stuck on a switch with him, which shows really good off-ball execution from him. He really locked in on both ends for this game. And I wish that he had gotten more opportunity to really do something.
In a game where you're struggling offensively, Jabari, he's shooting better recently. You would figure the Rockets might do something to get him open, not just pass to him when you're panicked and you got to throw it to somebody or as a last second bailout, let's give it to Jabari or whatever. Like that's where the Rockets can get better offensively. That's where I feel like, we look at the offseason and one of the things the Rockets can improve is bring in a coach that knows a little bit more about offense and maybe can bring in some new ideas. And there's good offensive coaches that are out there. I mean, I don't know what Mike Malone knows, because he's had Jokic. So maybe that's too easy for him. And their offense is always pretty good, but he's out there. Maybe he doesn't get a head coaching job. Maybe you can bring somebody like him in, Taylor Jenkins, somebody else that's had a lot of success offensively. If he doesn't get a job, but there are guys out there that know something about offense that they could bring in and help. And Jabari is a guy that I think more can be done with Jabari. He's got a lot more potential offensively. It's just, I don't think he's always at his best of like, okay, throw it to him at the last second or whatever. You want to get him incorporated actually into the offense, like maybe run something for him sometimes. I'm not saying he's as talented as Sengun or Jalen, but you need a third guy. And the Rockets desperately need this third guy. And Dylan Brooks is, sometimes that answer, but he's not the answer for, the next 5 years. Maybe Jabari is, though.
Yeah, we just kind of desperately need a guy who it's just like, it's not working. We got to throw it to somebody. Just zing it over to Jabari. And half the reason he went that high, and I remember having a lot of arguments with people about Jabari before the 2022 draft, but the huge argument for him in that draft was come playoff time, the game slows down. He will always get you a shot. He will get you a decent look every single possession if you give him the ball and you just let him do his thing. He might have his turnovers. He might have his warts, but this is a guy you can throw the ball to at the 3, at the mid post. And he will get you something just because of his size, just because of his coordination, because of his athleticism at that size. He will find a way to get you a shot. And I'd like to see that gone to more instead of just kind of treating him like a 3-and-D option. I do think that the defense has been really good. The rebounding, he's been a great big man in like a very traditional big man sense. Let's see more of that wing offense. You got to try something new. Your big advantage against Golden State is your size, your rebounding. Let's play into that while also getting a guy who can maybe hit some shots.
They don't have a guy that can block Jabari Smith. I mean, that's the thing. And even Draymond, when he guarded him, Jabari drew a foul from Draymond. So that was big. But that leads me to our bigs and our big situation. Can Steven Adams play more minutes? And I don't mean, can we give him more minutes? I mean, is he physically capable? Because he needs to. And 19 minutes, Adams was the only Rocket who played with a positive plus minus. Not exactly a shock if you watch the Rockets games. He was +4. It's a 11.1 net with Adams on the floor. It was minus 31.2 with Adams off the floor in this game. The rebound percentage went from 50% to 71%. Again, thank you, Steven Adams stats for those numbers. And I wondered if Steph would go off with Adams on the floor, Cooper, but that didn't happen. So I need more Adams.
The big thing from the beginning of the season where he looked unplayable at times, he looks like he's gotten his mobility back. There's this one super high pick and roll where Steph has the ball at like half court and they're running this huge pick and roll and Steven Adams like blitzes him all the way to the corner between the half court line and the out of bounds. And he looked great. And then he recovered. That is the kind of stuff that you need to be seeing from Steven Adams for him to stay playable. And he's one of your best players. He's got to play. There's a lot of talk about, Steven Adams will play the non-Steph minutes. He'll play as a single big. You got to find a way to get him out there. He's got such a positive impact. He does good stuff. He looks like a seasoned playoff veteran because he is one. And you got to find a way to just get him on the floor more, get him involved more. I thought getting him going downhill towards the basket was really great. Keep him around the basket for offensive rebounds in that dunker spot. As a passer, I think he's a really good DHO passer, and he hits a lot of those like advanced backdoor cut passes that someone like Sengun can miss a lot of the time. There were 2 or 3 times that Jalen had a great backdoor cut that Sengun just couldn't hit him. And I think a guy like Adams playing those minutes, running those kinds of sets, he's better as a just like standstill hub passer than Sengun is. And I'd like to see him get more of that opportunity instead of just being out there to offensive rebound and, set really hard screens. Let's find more ways to get him involved in the offense. He's a very skilled, very good player who does good things when he's on the floor, no matter what you ask him to do.
Quick aside, one of the issues with Sengun and his passing when he's in that post is sometimes he starts dribbling. Steven Adams holds the ball for a little bit, looks around, because if you're dribbling, you can't make the pass, or the timing isn't there because by the time the guy makes the cut, the ball's hitting the ground instead of in your hands. So, yeah, and Adams did make a turnover trying to, weave one in between defenders at one point in the game. But great point. The Rockets were 11 for 20 from the free throw line. I don't think it was the difference in the game, but they had their usual issues. But if you take out Adams, who was 0 for 2, and Amen, who was 0 for 4, they were 11 for 14. Coop, I'd say I was a little shocked. Amen wasn't more of a factor. 8 points, 9 boards, 6 dimes, a steal, and a block. How did you think he played?
Offensively, he just looked rattled. I thought he looked, a little shaken, which is weird for a guy who, his big thing is, at OTE, he was a playoff riser. He's always been a guy who comes into the biggest games in the regular season and kind of exerts his will. But it's also his first NBA playoff game. I think there's a lot of talk about the defense. Steph did a lot of work on him. He did a lot of damage on him. I don't think Steph got very many open shots on Amen. I thought he did a really good job in one-on-one defense. You got to trust your process a little bit on the defensive end. As much as you want to talk about like, Steph had 30, how many of those points were on Amen? Knock on wood, I don't think he's going to cook the most athletic person alive like that again. At least not with the level of defense that he played tonight or last night.
And I don't think the backdoor cuts, we didn't see that. And I don't know how much of that is just Golden State shut him off or like look for that, took that away from the Rockets. But that's always a key for his offense. 9 points, not a lot for Amen Thompson these days. So like that's going to be another thing. It's just he's got to unlock a little bit more offensively. He had a couple of nice mid-range shots. I felt like he was a little bit more comfortable as the game went along. Same with Jabari. So hopefully, Jabari and Amen don't start off the game this bad because the second quarter, obviously that killed him. That was the difference in the game. And, those guys and Jalen were just not there in the second quarter when you needed him.
Yeah, I thought the main problem for Amen was in that first half, he just looked far too passive. He wasn't cutting backdoor. He wasn't going to get offensive rebounds. He just looked more out of it. And part of that's guarding Steph. Part of that is having to chase him around screens, deny him back cuts. I don't think Steph got a single back cut on Amen, and he got like 3 or 4 on, the other guys who we tried to put on him for easy layup attempts. And that was something that we kind of ran into with Amen at the midpoint of the season. I think we even talked about that on the pod. Was as good as he is, as athletic as he is, he's still a second-year player. There's still a chance that you're running him ragged. He's not that used to the grind yet. So I would like to see more from him there. But the main issue offensively was just that the handle looked way too loose. He looked like he was in OTE again. He was dribbling too high. He was losing the ball out of bounds on plays he had no business doing it. I think he's really cleaned up the handle, over the last few months, this season especially. I think there's been a huge development in his handle. He just looked young again, right? He looked like a young guy in the playoffs for the first time. I'd like to see that cleaned up. I'd like to see them find more creative ways to get him involved that aren't just, hey, go do something and get downhill. But I really did like his aggressiveness. Even when the shot wasn't falling, he refused to let it, get to him mentally, especially in that second half. And he kept fighting and fighting and fighting. And even when the shot wasn't falling, and even when he looked, a little passive, still making great passes, still creating advantages every single time he got the ball. That's the kind of play that I want to see. And you have to believe the shot's going to fall, and he's going to find a way, with the film study to really make an impact in the next game.
Yeah, I got some assist I mentioned, and that assist to Jabari late got him in the corner. Jabari got the 3. He was double teamed. It was jammed up in the paint. Not many guys on the Rockets team. He's probably the only guy in the Rockets team that could make that pass. So that was good. The Rockets were 6 for 29 from 3. Fred, Jalen, and Tari were 2 for 21. I guess the good news is the rest of the team was 4 for 8. That's called glass half full, kids. So that was one of the things that I noticed. Any angle that we missed, Cooper, or any adjustments that you see in game 2 that maybe that we haven't got into? Anything there?
We talked about him a little bit getting more minutes at the top, but I do think you have to see more Tari. He was 3 for 10 or whatever. I didn't love some of the shots, but he went out there. He had the best results of any defender on the team, I think. I do think Amen is a better defender in a vacuum, but Tari was getting stops. Every single time he was on somebody, he was impacting shots, blocking shots, getting steals. He was everywhere defensively. He had the one pick 6, and then he had the other steal where he went down, made a good pass, and then we got an easy open bucket. He wasn't credited for an assist there, but he went down and created an advantage. And that's the kind of plays that you need in a real, slugfest of a game. And that's what this whole series is going to be. It's going to be a slow it down slugfest against Golden State. Get Tari more comfortable. I liked that the one take he had off the dribble. I'd like to see more of that if you can get him matched up against their smaller guards, get him on a Buddy Hield, on a Pajemski, even on a Steph. If you can get him onto these smaller guards and get him going downhill and then have your offensive rebounders in position, that's good offense. That's better offense than, a Fred VanVleet pick and roll. So I would like to see more stuff there. Would love to see more minutes from Bari. Just want to see more creativity, but it's hard not to be at least kind of optimistic after that game. Looked like we were out of it, down 20-something, to come back, make it a game, down late. You just couldn't execute anything in the last 3-4 minutes. That's impressive. For our first playoff game, for about, 70% of the guys who got minutes, that's big. And it was really encouraging, even if the first half was disgusting.
Tari blew that one bunny layup late in the game. So that was maybe, slight criticism. I mean, he wasn't getting the shots to go down. He has some games like that. It seems like it's sometimes all or nothing at times with Tari offensively and his shots. But Tari was, the video I saw, he was there supposedly an hour and a half after the game, just shooting and doing stuff there. The video I saw was him just shooting layups or whatever. I'm like, against nobody. That's not the problem. You're going to have 2 or 3 guys around you with Golden State if you're trying to get a layup. And that's what happened, why he, it hurt him missing that one shot. But, that kid, I mean, he's going to figure it out. I just have so much confidence in him and the effort that he puts in. And you know what? I know fans feel like the Rockets got no respect going into this series, but everything pundits said, it's true. And it played out in game 1. Curry and Butler, great. They got big shots and big moments. The Rockets offense is bad. They fell apart in the final minutes. We all talked about this. The media talked about it. The national media talked about it. Local, this is what we're worried about. So you can't be upset because this is the problem. And, Cooper, I had Adam Spillane on last week to preview this, and he made the perfect point. Fans got a little overconfident after the Rockets manhandled the Warriors 2 weeks ago, but that was their 3rd game in 4 nights. They're an old team, but the first round, the schedule plays right into their hands. They'll get plenty of rest for their old stars, and unless Jalen flips that superstar switch on for the rest of this series, and I mean every single game, not just like 2 games in the rest of the series, the Rockets are in deep trouble. I just got to be honest about it.
They need to get a little bit more creative with the offense to get Jalen going in ways that aren't the most predictable thing of all time. I really did like the emphasis on just attacking the rim. They got Jalen head of steam right towards the rim. They got Amen head of steam heading towards the rim. But you got to find a new way to get there. You are going to win this game on this series on your layups. We're not going to outshoot Steph. We are not going to outshoot Jimmy Butler from mid-range. We're not. Maybe we'll win a game or 2 because we'll beat them in the 3-point battle off just luck. But you're going to win this series off of your layups, your easy opportunities at the rim, and your offensive rebounding. So you have to find new ways to get going. You talked about Taylor Jenkins, as an offensive coach to come in this offseason. As, strange as his tenure in Memphis was one of the best interior scoring teams, ever a few seasons ago with their weird personnel. And I do think that would be an interesting fit. Like you're forcing Fred to get to the rim and take layups, which is not a winning. If that's your offense, you're going to lose the game. So you got to find a way to get the rest of these guys heading downhill into offensive rebounding positioning. You got to find a way to do something like this. And I do think that the extra time that we're given between games will give the coaching staff, a lot of time to really focus on the film and drill it into these guys' heads. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. I'm really excited for game 2.
I got one thought on the NBA playoff weekend in general. It was boring. Look, the average margin of victory, 8 games played, was 19 points. No, that's not totally skewed by that Thunder blowout. There was only one game decided by single digits. I know we enjoy watching the Rockets style of play, but honestly, it was a defensive slog. Nobody likes a defensive slog. Coop, how do you feel? What do you think about that?
That Nuggets Clippers game, great entertainment. I really enjoyed the Lakers Timberwolves game, if only because watching the Lakers fail is really enjoyable to me. But I'm a defense guy. I've always been a defense guy. You go look at my draft boards. I'm a defense guy. I'm a Cougars fan. You know, I love defense. I love the intricacies of it. And that was a really fun game for me. You know, I understand if it's not to everyone's cup of tea, but, you know, seeing Sengun really step up defensively, I almost tweeted about this last night. But if you had told me, you know, in 2021 on draft night, right after we drafted Sengun, that this was going to be his first playoff game, he was going to have good defense, have 26 points, assists, rebounds, steals, just do everything and posterize, you know, Draymond Green, who could win Defensive Player of the Year. If you had told me that was Sengun's first game in the playoffs, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have, my jaw would have been on the ground. It would have been completely impossible to me. And it's been really cool seeing him grow, seeing all these guys grow. You know, even though they lost the game, they showed the toughness that you need to come back and win this series. If you're going to win a series against Golden State, they're going to hit you in the mouth over and over and over and over again, and you have to show the toughness to get up and keep going. And they showed that last night. So yeah, it's hard. It's really hard for me not to be optimistic.
I said that they're not going to win because of who they're playing, not because I don't like the Rockets, not because I don't have confidence in this team. It's just, you know, this is a worst case scenario matchup. I mean, I know the Rockets fans tried to convince themselves otherwise, but Golden State is a worst case scenario because they have Steph, because they have Jimmy, because they have Draymond, and because they match up well against the Rockets. We've seen it over and over and over again. They match up well. Yeah, we got a couple of wins this year against them. We also got 3 losses against them this year, if my stats are right before this game. So, you know, it's tough. I hope we see some stuff different. Got to get game 2. You cannot go down 0-2, lose the first 2 games at home, especially Golden State. Great home field advantage. So we'll see. But he's Alley-oop Coop on X, Alley_oop_ Coop. Make sure to listen to the Upside Swings podcast to prep yourself for the NBA draft. It's not that far away, just weeks away. Thanks for doing this, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. You can actually find Upside Swings on YouTube now. Shameless self-promotion. We do have a slightly more visual format, and we do it in smaller chunks. We do just on each player, so you don't have to skip around on, you know, Spotify, anything like that. You can just go exactly to the player you want to watch us on there, and you get to see me react to NBA playoff games live while we're talking about this kind of stuff. But thanks again for having me on. Hopefully we make it far enough into the playoffs. We get to talk about this again. Go Rockets.
Yeah, definitely. Also a reminder, got a special guest on Thursday talking about the second game and the first 2 games of the series. Somebody a little bit different angle. I'll give you that hint. So keep an eye out for that. But thanks a lot, guys, and have a good one.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.